Kadosh Boker or Masechet Megila Daf Bet Amud Aleph, last line on the page. Okay, Rav Ashi. Okay, listen carefully. Rav Ashi, shh. Rav Ashi Kashyale de Rabbi Yehuda ad Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Ashi, right on the last line of the page for the fourth time. Yeah, one more time. Bet Amud Aleph, last line of the page. There's a dot. Rav Ashi Kashyale de Rabbi Yehuda ad Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Ashi had a contradiction. Right? He had a question. Kashya. It's difficult for him, a difficulty between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yehuda. Umukimla lebraita. So he went and he said that the braita is going to be what? That the braita is going to be like Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Okay. And he comes and he says, right? And not Rabbi Yehuda himself. Okay. So he comes and he says as follows. Okay. Which one? There's Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, and then there's Rabbi Yehuda. Okay? So he comes and he says like this. If you guys look over here in the chart, right? In the chart over here you have Rabbi Yehuda. There's Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai. Okay? You have Rabbi Yosef ben Chalafta. But then here in Dor Chamishi, in the fifth generation, right, there's a number 5. In the number 5 of the fifth generation where you have Rabbeinu, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, you have over here, right? You have Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda. So therefore, I've got a contradiction between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yehuda. That's over here. So I come and I say, so the same thing? No, one of them is on the fourth generation, and one of them is the fifth generation. So therefore, he comes and he says, so I'm going to put the Braita, which is later, I'm going to put him like Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, which is Dor Chamishi. Okay, so one more time, I've got a contradiction between Rabbi Yehuda, right? And then he said, no, you're right. One of them is really Be'emet, the next generation, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda. So let's start. Okay. Which one? No, Rabbi Yehuda once. Yeah? Yes, because Rabbi Yehuda is up here. I had a contradiction in the Gemara between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yehuda, 2 different sayings of Rabbi Yehuda. So we answered, in order to say that it's not contradiction, one of them is Rabbi Yehuda and one of them is Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, which is one generation later. Yes, 2 different sayings. So let's see, what was the question? We're on Bet Amud Bet. Look on Bet Amud Bet on the top line. So ask the Gemara, Umi amar Rabbi Yehuda, bizman hazeh hol mistaklim ba, en korin ota ela bizmana. This is like the first braita or like the Ika de Amre? One more time. We had yesterday, right? And this is very important because according to your answer, I know if you guys are with me or not. One more time. Yesterday and the day before yesterday and the day before yesterday, we kept on going. Right? We kept on learning that there was going to be 2 different versions of Rabba bar Chana in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. According to the first version, there was a question and refutation against Rabbi Yochanan. And the Rabbi Yehuda was a question against him. According to the second version, right, it was a proof. It wasn't a meiteve. Meiteve means that you're asking a question. It was a tanya namihachi. Tanya namihachi means we also learned a braita in accordance to that. So what we just mentioned right now, what is it? Is it the second braita? Meaning, is it the second like the Ika de Amre, or is it like the first one? So I mentioned one word, 2 words actually, that those 2 words already gave you the answer. Chazaku Baruch. If you remember, if you remember, we learned that the first time around, right? We learned Amar Rabba bar Chana Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Zo divrei Rabbi Akiva stimata shedarash zman zmanam zmanehem. And we already explained why you didn't say darash zmanam in the second shita, right? In the second ikadamne, because even the Chachamim also agree with that drasha. And then he says, but according to Chachamim omrim en korin l'tala bizmana. That was the first one. So we asked the question, what are you talking about en korin l'tala bizmana? Is that always? So it's not like Rabbi Yehuda, it's not like Rabbanan. It was a refutation against Rabbi Yochanan. There was a Ika de Amre, that the Ika de Amre brought down Amar Rabbi Yochanan, right? That what? Zu divrei Rabbi Akiva stimata, right? That basically these are the words of Rabbi Akiva stimata. And then what he came and he said was, aval chachamim amru, holu bizman hazeh. They said bizman hazeh. Once they say bizman hazeh, mistaklim ba, en korin tal bizman tani mihachi. That's the exact same thing because Rabbi Yehuda was going like chachamim. The bizman hazeh is a different halacha. So says the Gemara. Now we're going back to what we just said on Bet Amud Bet, right? Umi amar Rabbi Yehuda. Does Rabbi Yehuda say bizman hazeh Hoilu mistaklim ba'en korin ota labizmana. That since you look at it, you're only going to read it in the proper time. Meaning, we're going to look. You remember what was the pshat we were looking at it? Whenever you read the Megillah, it's going to be on the Yudalid. How many days are left in the month? 15, Chazak Baruch, until, why? Because it's only a month of 29, because we always said Adar is Chaser. Then what happened? You have another 15 days until you get to Pesach. So therefore you have the 30 days. So, I mean, since everybody's looking at Purim in order to know when is Pesach, that's Bizman Hazeh, Hoilu Mistaklim Ba. They're going to look at it. Look at it to what? Look at it to understand when is Pesach. So since everybody is looking at the Megillah in order to know when is Pesach, so you're only going to read it at the proper time. If I'm going to come and do it on the 13th, what's going to happen? I'm going to do Pesach 2 days earlier. And then what happens? You're going to finish 2 days earlier. Starting Pesach 2 days earlier, no. Okay, it's not the best. It's the end that you're eating chametz on Pesach. That's the biggest problem, right? And then we brought you down, if you remember the story of Rabbi Yonatan Eibishitz and everything else, right? Of what happened there with that he saved the Jews of the city, right? Exactly. So therefore, he comes and he says, does he actually say that? He says, why? Urminhi. We have a contradiction. What's the contradiction? He says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda, Ematai, when do we say that you're allowed to read on the 11, 12, and all these things? Makom shenichnasim b'sheni v'chamishi. That's only if they come in on Mondays and Thursdays. Aval makom shenichnasim b'sheni v'chamishi en korin l'ta b'izmana. But if they don't come inside, so then they do have to read it in the proper time. Makom shenichnasim b'sheni v'chamishi mi'a karinan va'afilu b'izman hazeh. He says, 1 second, it's mashma that nowadays, if they do go in on the Mondays and Thursdays, you do read it, but when? On the 11, 12, 13, even Bizman Hazeh. So how could you tell me that according to Rabbi Yehuda, Bizman Hazeh doesn't exist any other day other than the 14th? Obviously, if you're in a walled city, it's 15, but I'm saying about the meaning the 14th. What are you talking about? Here it's mashma. We made a diuk from the Braita that we said that what? That if it is that you are nichnas, so then what happens? You're going to do it on the, right, on the 11, 12, 13 as well. So answers the Gemara, Omukim la Braita Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. So we're going to put the Braita, right, like Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Meaning this Braita that we just mentioned right now, we're going to make it like Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, not Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, so you're right. We changed. Rabbi Yehuda was what we knew, that Holu Bizmana Zem Istaklimba and Korinutala Bizmana. That since nowadays we're going to look at it, we're only going to read it in the proper time. That was Rabbi Yehuda. We now brought another Braita, and this Braita was a contradiction. That we were making a diuk, we were deducing from the Braita that nowadays, also if they go in on Mondays and Thursdays, you do read it 11, 12, 13. So the Gemara answers, you're right, that's what we mean, this Braita, like Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. It's not Rabbi Yehuda, it's Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. In order that you don't have a contradiction between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yehuda. Okay? So says the Gemara, Umishum de kashele de Rabbi Yehuda de Rabbi Yehuda, mukim la Braita Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. He says, I don't understand you. That if that's the way that you work, it's the easiest thing in the world. Imagine right now, you come and I tell you it's a stira. Rabbi, today you said A, and then tomorrow you said B. And they're going to answer, no, it was the other rabbi. That's a very easy answer. You could always answer that. What does it mean? Well, just because you have a stira, you're just going to come and say, by the way, it's not Rabbi Yehuda, it's Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. How does that make sense? This is Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Just change the name. What does that mean? How do you do that? So says the Gemara, no. You're right. You can't just come and just like change names like that. It doesn't work. He says, Rav Ashi, Shmiya le deika detani la Rabbi Yehuda, veika detani le Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Ashi heard this Braita. He heard it once in the name of Rabbi Yehuda and once in the name of Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. So now that he understood that if he learned it as Rabbi Yehuda, it's going to be a contradiction. That's why he says, since it was going to be difficult for him, Rabbi Yehuda, if he would have learned it that way, Amar, he said, the one that said, Man Rabbi Yehuda is lav davka, and the man Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda is davka. Right? That's why. Meaning like this. Let's go one more time outside. No. One second. So one more time. Right? Let's go back. Let's go outside. We have a contradiction between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yehuda. So Rav Ashi comes and he says, I have a contradiction between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yehuda. Because of that contradiction, I'm going to put the Braita that it's not Rabbi Yehuda, it's Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. So first we have to analyze what's the contradiction. So contradiction is very simple. We just learned in Rabbi Yehuda, right, that Rabbi Yehuda said in the Ika de Amre that according to Chachamim, Hoilu bizman hazeh mistaklim ba. Since nowadays we look in the Megillah to know when it's Pesach, because we read the Megillah on the 14th. You have 15 days left until the end of Adar. Then you have another 15 days until Pesach. So therefore you got 30 days. So everybody is looking towards the Megillah to know when is Pesach. When I find out when it's Purim, I know when it's Pesach. So hoilu mistaklim ba. Since I'm looking into it to know when it's Pesach, en korino tala bizmana. You only read it on the 14th. But if I'm going to read it on any other day other than the 14th, I'm going to get into a problem. One second. Okay? Until here we're clear.
It's basically pushing the 11, 12, 13, 14 version.
For sure. No, he's not pushing it. He's saying nowadays it doesn't apply. Okay. Why? Because I need to look into here. Yeah? Fine? Okay. So now, he comes and he says, but I have a contradiction. What's the contradiction? There's a Braita. The Braita is mashma. Which one? A Braita. So it's Mukila the Braita. Dalet Amud Bet. No, you're correct, doctor. You're correct. It's the Mishnah, it's the Braita on Dalet Amud Bet, and it's the Mishnah on He Amud Aleph. The Mishnah on He Amud Aleph. Okay, so here he comes and he says like this. Yeah, he comes and he says, yeah, what exactly does he say? He comes and he says like this. He says, right, as follows. He says, the Amar Rabbi Yehuda bizman hazeh nowadays hoil mistaklim ba en korin tel bizmana. The other one is going to be Amar Rabbi Yehuda ematai makom shenichnasim b'sheni v'chamishi. When do we say this concept? Only if they go in on Mondays and Thursdays to the cities. Aval makom shenichnasim b'sheni v'chamishi en korin tel bizmana. Right? What does that mean? When do we give a heter for the villagers to read early? Only when there's Sheni v'chamishi, but when they come in to give, right? When they come in for Sheni v'chamishi, in order to provide for the provisions, and they do those things. But what happens right now if they don't do it? If they don't come? So obviously you're only going to read it in the proper time. Meaning, I'm going to tell you, listen, Rabbi, anyways, the villagers don't come in to provide the provisions. Are you going to give them a heter to read it early? No. It was a kula. It was a leniency. Only if they come in. So therefore I come and I say they don't have to come twice. They come on the Monday and Thursday. They come, they read the Megillah, and then they're going to come on the Tuesday, Wednesday, or Friday, whenever it is, and to provide the provisions, right, of what's going on. So therefore he comes and he says it's only makom shenichnasin. Makom she'en nichnasin, and couldn't tell bizmana. Meaning they're not going to have this special leniency. It was a special leniency, right? So only if they come in. If they don't come in, I'm sorry, you have to read it on the 14th. You're going to read it on the normal time. So we make a diuk. The diuk in the Mishnah, because there in the Mishnah, it doesn't say anything. There in the Mishnah.
Which Mishnah are you talking about?
Hey Amud Aleph. Look on Hey Amud Aleph, there's a Mishnah. Diuk is we're deducing. We're deducing from the Mishnah. The end of the Mishnah on Hey Amud Aleph. Look on Hey Amud Aleph, there's a Mishnah. In the end of the Mishnah, it says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda, Ematai, there's a dalet there. Ematai, makom shenichnasim b'sheni v'chamishi. Ava makom shenichnasim b'sheni v'chamishi, en korinun tala bizmana. Right? What does that mean? They're only going to read it bizmana. So now that was Mishnah. We stopped. Now we are going to Gemara, Hey Amud Aleph. Daf Hey Amud Aleph. Daf Hey. Daf Hey Amud Aleph. Yeah. So look in the Gemara now. The Gemara.
Bring another Mishnah saying the same thing that we said in the first.
We didn't say anything in the Mishnah, in the first Mishnah. The first Mishnah, we just told you that you read it on 11, 12, 13 for villagers. Did I give you the reason? No, that's the second Mishnah. The second Mishnah is explaining to you the first Mishnah. So the second Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda comes and he tells you, by the way, in the first Mishnah, we just gave you a heter to read on 11, 12, 13 for villages. I want you to know that's only in a place where they're going to come inside. If they're not going to come inside, they don't get this heter. We deduce from there, and that's what the Gemara now is going to come and deduce, right? Makom shenichnasim b'sheni v'chamishi, mi'akarinan. We do read it, fafilu bizman hazeh. Even nowadays. That's a diuk from that Mishnah. Meaning like this, right? Look at our Gemara. Everyone go back to our Gemara, right? Umi amar, I'm in the last word of the first line. Umi amar Rabbi Yehuda, does Rabbi Yehuda, right, say, bizman hazeh, that nowadays, holu mistaklim ba, since we're going to look at it, en korino tala bizmana, we're only going to read it in the proper time. Urminhi, we have a contradiction. What's the contradiction? Amar Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda, Ematai. When are these words? Makom shenichnasim b'sheni v'chamishi. Only when they come in on sheni v'chamishi. Aval makom shenichnasim b'sheni v'chamishi. But in a place where they're not going to come in on Mondays and Thursdays, en korin ota labizmana nekuda. That is the end of the Mishnah there. Right? That's the end of the Mishnah there. Meaning, if I would put quotes and unquotes, like to start quotes and finish quotes, that's where I finished. Now the Gemara is going to analyze this and tell you what is the stira. Because we still didn't get to a stira yet. What's the difference? He says, okay, fine, he just gave you a leniency. The stira is from now. Makom shenichnasin b'sheni v'chamishi, mi'a karinan, va'afilu bizman hazeh. So that means it comes out that I'm going to deduce, that's a diuk. I'm deducing that if you do go in, right, nowadays, you read it when? 11, 12, 13, when? Even bizman hazeh.
It's another version then.
No, it's a diuk from that Mishnah. We're making a diuk from the Mishnah that even nowadays you do 11, 12, 13. So how does Rabbi Yehuda tell you bizman hazeh, holu mistaklim ba'im korin ota labizmana? It's incorrect. Look at the next Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda tells you makom shenichnasim b'sheni v'chamishi. You do do it, even bizman hazeh.
So that's why they separate into two different ones.
That's why we answer that one of them is Rabbi Yehuda and one is Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. We change the name. Now the Gemara is going to ask.
That says now he corrects it.
Yes, that's what it says. Rav Ashi. No, because that's what he's saying. Rav Ashi had a question from Rabbi Yehuda to Rabbi Yehuda, and therefore he went and he said, "Umukim lebraita Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda."
They from the first page. Correct.
By the way, one more time, doctor. Everyone, careful. I just realized something. Right? I don't know if maybe I said it incorrectly the first time, so pay attention. Because if I did, then I'm retracting. What is the Braita and what is the Mishnah? What is the Braita and what is the Mishnah? Which one is Rabbi Yosef Yehuda and which one is Rabbi Yehuda? Very good. So that's why it says ve'ukila lebraita deleel Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda.
Because Rabbi Yehuda is closer to Rabbi Akiva.
Chazak baruch. Right? Meaning, right, what you just did now, right? Geonut. Listen carefully.
Because you showed the original, not the copies.
Okay, very good. So listen. Fine, okay. Make sure you buy us the more originals and stop talking about originals. Yeah, one more time. What happened is as follows. One more time. Right? And that's why the doctor told me, yeah, but Rabbi, it's a Mishnah. There's the Braita and then there's a Mishnah. The Mishnah was the one later on. There in the Mishnah, it said Rabbi Yehuda. Okay? Here, it's Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Now, how do you know that? Rashi already told it to you. It's the first line in Rashi. Look in the first line in Rashi. Ve'ukila lebraita.
Where?
On Bet Amubet. Where are you? You're on Bet Amubet, no? On the left side. Remember, Rashi is always on the inner side, unless, right, is always going to be on the inner side of the binding. Right? I don't know if you realize that. Meaning like this. Everyone has a Gemara, look at me. Everyone, when you have a Gemara, it's always on the inner side of the binding. So here you have Rashi, and usually here is Tosafot. There was no Tosafot on this page, so both sides was Rashi. It's the other way around.
So closer to the binding.
It's always to the binding. I just said it. No, there's no Tosafot on Bet Amud Aleph, right?
Okay.
Which one? On Gimel Amud Aleph. Yes, I'm on Bet Amud Aleph. Yeah, one more time. Betzad Pnimi. Yeah, that's the Pnimi. Yeah, okay. But if there's no Tosafot, so then Rashi will be usually on both sides of the page. What? That was Bet Amud Aleph. Look at Bet Amud Aleph. Bet Amud Aleph. Rashi's on both sides. There was no Tosafot. Okay? So one more time. So says the Gemara, Ve'uki, look at Rashi. Ve'uki la lehach braita deleel Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Okay? And then it continues. Fine. So Bli Neder will continue tomorrow, right? But this is just the beauty of just seeing how it is when you're going to have a stira, right? So one more time, right? Just for everybody to understand, one more time. Rav Ashi comes and he had a contradiction between Rabbi Yehuda. Because of the contradiction, he changed the braita that really it's supposed to be Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. So what is the contradiction? The contradiction is saying that does Rabbi Yehuda say that you only read bizmana? We have a Mishnah, and in the Mishnah it says mefurash according to Rabbi Yehuda, right? That he says what? Makom shenichnasim the korin ota b'sheni, right? Makom shenichnasim b'sheni chamishi korin ota b'Yud Aleph Yud Bet, and if em nichnasim as en korin ota bizmana, mashma that nowadays if they are nichnasim, also kurinota, right? Also going to read it on the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th. So we answered, no, you're right. Because of that, so the Gemara asked what? I just changed names like that? No, you don't just change names. Since he heard it in two different versions, he said one of them that he taught it like this was lav dafka. The other one that taught it was 100% dafka. Okay? Fine. Let's go to
much.
Have a wonderful day.